So we have come to what I think is the second best Parsha in Breshit, at least in my opinion. So for me, nothing can compete with last week, which was Vayetze. I'll just remind you, I think that's Jacob's coming out story. It's literally called Vayetze, and he came out. I'm just letting you know that now. But Vayishlach is a close second. And the two Parshiot actually have quite a bit in common. Most notably, Jacob interacts with God in both Parshiot, and in both Parshiot, the interaction is a bit unclear about what is happening. So to give a brief refresher, in Vayetze last week, Jacob falls asleep and has a dream of the ladder to the heavens, with angels going up and going down, and when he wakes up, he says, "Surely God has been in this place all along, and I didn't know it." In Vayishlach, this week's Parsha, Jacob once again has a nighttime encounter with an angel or a divine being, this time called an Ish, and who he wrestles with. This time, once he recovers from his evening activities, he names the place Peniel, meaning, "For I have seen God face to face here and lived." And in both Parshiot, we see Jacob pray. Possibly the first true prayers we've heard in all of Breshit. Yes, Abraham talks with God and argues with God, but I'm not sure that we truly see him pray, or at least what we might associate with prayer. And Isaac barely speaks with God at all, and certainly not in a prayerful way. Even at the Akedah, where we might expect to hear Isaac's prayers and calling out, we get silence. So Jacob becomes our first patriarch to beseech Adonai in what I would call a modern prayer. Let's take a look at both Parshiot, both prayers, to see them a little bit more in depth. In Vayetze, Jacob's on the run from his family. He's running away from his brother Esau, who seems certain to kill him, and he is seeking shelter. He is both physically and emotionally all alone. When he has the dream of the ladder, God appears to him and says, "Vahine Adonai nitzav alav vayomer, Ani Adonai, Elohei Avraham avicha, ve'Elohei Yitzchak, ha'aretz asher shochev aleha, lecha etnena ulezarecha." Behold, God, Yud-He Vav-He, God, was stationed above him on the ladder and says, "I am Adonai. I am the God of your father Abraham and Isaac. This land that you are lying on, I will give it to you and your children." This is God formally introducing himself to Yaakov. The next morning, Jacob takes a vow and says, "If God remains with me, protecting me on this journey that I am making, and giving me bread to eat and clothing to wear, and I return safe to my father's house, then Adonai, Yod-He Vav-He, shall be my God." So it kind of sounds like a prayer, right? He's praying for God's protection. He's asking God to keep him safe on his journey. It's almost like Tfilat HaDerech, almost. Because in this formulation of Jacob's prayer, it reads more like a bargaining agreement or even an ultimatum. God, if you protect me and keep me safe, then you can be my God. It's not exactly what we think God would want to hear. So I want to point out one other strange piece about Yaakov's prayer here, which you've probably heard me emphasizing as I read it through, which is that in the prayer he says, "Im yehiyeh Elohim imadi," if God, but he uses the word Elohim, if God is with me, if Elohim God is with me, then Yud-He Vav-He God can be my God. So it's a little bit strange. Now let's move on to our Parsha this week. Once again, Jacob is on the run, this time away from his father-in-law Lavan, and once again, he's worried that his brother Esav is going to kill him. He's so worried, in fact, that he divides his family into two camps, and he sends them along ahead of him, and he spends the night alone. And the text tells us, "V'yavater Yaakov levado," Jacob remained alone. He is alone in dread and in fear. And in his anxiety, he begins to pray. And this time he says, "Elohei avi Avraham ve'Elohei avi Yitzchak," God of my fathers. Adonai, Yud-He-Vav-He this time, who said to me, return to your native land and I will deal bountifully with you. I am unworthy of all the kindness that you have steadfastly shown me, your servant. With my staff alone I crossed this Jordan, and now I'm coming back I have become 2 camps, I've become numerous. Save me, please, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esav, or I fear he may come and strike me down, mothers and children alike. So it's quite a different tone. This time it resembles much more of the prayer structure that we are familiar with. He invokes his ancestors, Elohei Avi Avraham, Elohei Avi Yitzchak. He gives thanks for all the abundance that he has, and then he makes his requests. Please save me. I am scared and alone. And this time he directs his prayer to Adonai, Yud-He-Vav-He. What a difference time can make in one's spirit. There's a commentary that says that this version of Jacob's prayer is actually the model that all of our prayer is modeled on. It is from this prayer and this Parsha, that we learn that we must give praise to God. In our Amidah, we give praise, we request, and we give thanks. That we have to do all 3 of those things in order for it to be a complete prayer. Okay, so what is the deal with him praying to Adonai, some places, and Elohim in other places, or any other name given for God? Well, it so happens that this week's Parsha is also very big on names. In this week's Parsha, Jacob becomes Yisrael, the one who struggles with or strives with or persists with God, which is the name that will ultimately go on to become the name of the Jewish people. And when he wrestles with the angel or the Ish or the divine being, whatever it is you want to call it, he asks, what is your name? Hagida na, tell me please your name. And the angel responds, you must not ask my name, and then immediately takes his leave. So there are many reasons given as to why this being, divine or not, could not share his name. Perhaps angel naming conventions are simply just different from humans, and knowing an angel's name isn't really useful as knowing each other's names. But beyond that, this scene reminded me of another scene where the divine is asked for a name, except this time a name is actually given. And that is the scene at the burning bush, where Moshe says, everyone is going to ask me who sent me. What is the name I should give them? And God says, Ehyeh asher ehyeh. That sort of impossible to understand answer, I will be that I will be, or I am that I am. But God goes one step further and says, in the less quoted part of the answer, tell them, Ehyeh sent you. So now I would like to offer some wisdom from my learning with my teacher at Hadar, Rav Eli Confer, who I've been studying tefillah with this semester, who says that every other time God uses the word Ehyeh or any other conjugation of that word, Haya, Hayiti, whenever God speaks about being, it is always followed with the word Im, with you. I will be with you. I was with you. I am with you. The God of Ehyeh, the God that introduces God's self to Moshe as Ehyeh, which is also the God of Yud-He-Vav-He, that sort of mashup of all of the letters that could possibly mean past, present, or future. This God is the God of I will be with you. There are multiple names for God used in this very parsha, in Vayishlach. Adonai and Elohim, of course, we've already talked about those, but God actually also comes to Jacob and introduces God's self and says, I am El Shaddai, the God of abundance and fertility. Go, be fruitful, and multiply. So why do we direct our prayers to Adonai, to Yud-He-Vav-He? Why do we take Jacob's shoddy and shaky attempt at prayer as our paradigm, instead of praying to El Shaddai or Elohim or any other number of names that we could use for God? Why do we use this version of Jacob when he is struggling with a divine being that he doesn't even know the name of? And I think the answer is that it is so easy for us to feel alone. In our current world, especially so. Even when we're with people, it can feel easy to feel alone. Whether it's because the culture is so polarizing right now, and so we constantly feel the need to divide ourselves, or because so much of the world is focused on screens or being plugged into devices and not on each other. But whatever the reason is, I think that feeling lonely now is probably in some ways our default emotion. And I think many of us feel connected to Yaakov when the text tells us, Vayivater Yaakov levado, Jacob was left alone. It is in his aloneness that he finally formulates his first real prayer to Adonai. But it's not the God of abundance that he prays to, and it's not the God that he's been in contact with before, the one that he was testing. It is the God of I will be with you that he reaches out to. And this is the God who answers him. It is this God that we are meant to invoke every single day in our prayers. We take it for granted that we begin all of our blessings with Baruch Atah Adonai. But it could have been otherwise. We could have said Baruch Atah Elohim, or something to that effect. But I think that it is beautiful and profound that out of all of the names and manifestations of God, the rabbis knew that the one that we would need most, the answer that we would most want to hear to almost all of our prayers, is simply Ehyeh, I will be with you. Even when we are at our most like Jacob, scared, alone, distressed, possibly in a dire situation of our own making, even then we are granted the ability to speak with Adonai and hopefully hear the ineffable words from a God that we can only struggle with and never see, a God that we can only try and persist with even when we are not able to truly name or know them. And we hope to feel those simple words in our soul, I will be with you. So I hope that in your prayers tonight, you're able to hear some of those words a little bit. And Shabbat Shalom.